Hello, and welcome to the Hopes for School podcast, where we amplify student voice and talk about educational transformation. We are so excited today to have the one and only George Couros with us. George and I have been friends for a long, long time, and he's actually Impress is publishing or has published Hopes for Schools. So, George, we're so excited to have you. Welcome.
Listen, you told me before not to make fun of the intro music. I love it. I was
Oh,
like, yeah.
good.
No, I was like, why would I make fun of this? I love it. It's like I just
Oh,
like
yay.
it's
There
a
you
little
go.
vibe. It feels like a open vibe as you come in. I love it.
Oh, awesome. Well, there you go. For people who don't know you, maybe if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I was born and raised in a small town called Humboldt, Saskatchewan, Canada, and had an amazing upbringing there. Obviously, very close to my family. Amazing teachers, amazing school experience. It's like I always think about how that time was very different from maybe what kids are experiencing in school right now. I remember my mom walked me to kindergarten the first day, and that was the last time she walked me to school. And I was like on my own ever since then, which is like, it's kind of an amazing experience. And yeah, I keep close with all my teachers that, as many teachers as possible. I talk to them still to this day, which is really, really cool. I went to university in Saskatchewan, Canada. For Americans, probably don't know where that is, but wonderful university. Had a great experience. Spent about 20-ish years in the Canadian education system. And then, yeah, we moved to Orlando, Florida in the last 3 years. And I've done, everything. I trained to become a kindergarten teacher. And I always joke, it's like the only thing I've never taught. I taught grade 1 to 12, vice principal, worked in central office. And now I have the opportunity to speak all over the world and work with schools and districts and organizations talking about education. It's really an amazing opportunity because it is not something I even knew existed. It basically is something I fell into because one day we started sharing what was going on in our school and people thought it was really interesting. And I think one of my things I'm really passionate about is that what unintentionally happened to me is something I'm really intentionally trying to help, students and, and all staff and all of our learners in our community find what they're really passionate about. So I think that's kind of what I focus on right now.
Thanks. And I have to acknowledge, I'm sure anyone who's ever seen us together on a podcast or something knows how much of a mentor you have been for me, not just sort of as I was, going through different phases when I worked at the district level and then I went back to a school, but also as a presenter, how much you have inspired me and continue to inspire me in terms of the way you share a message that's usually very positive. Your favorite line, I want people to think and laugh and maybe cry, or cry, laugh, think. I can't remember the order of that, but you certainly have been an inspiration for me in that regard. And
I'm gonna stop you. I'm gonna stop you here. I'm gonna stop you right here. This thing, I so appreciate that you say that, and that means a lot to me. But there is something, Jennifer. You like this something. I'll say something all the time, right? But I don't spend my time giving feedback to people that don't actually go and make things happen. And that's something that I really appreciate about you, is that you don't just kind of sit back. You've helped so many people. You've really leaned into your own learning. And so I think that's something that you can say, like, I've given you advice, but that is like one minuscule part of the success that you have found and Karen has found. So I just want to make sure that people know that you are the reason you have found success. So I really appreciate all the effort that you put into things.
Fair. And thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yes.
Well, we're here with Karen, and you actually took a chance on a student and are publishing or have published her book. I would love to know a little bit more about how that all came to be. I know I've heard Karen tell it, but I would love to hear about that from your perspective.
Yeah, I would actually say it was straight out of jealousy and spite that I've actually asked Karen to write this book, because I have been writing for years and years and years. And then I fell upon a blog post by Karen, who was a student at the time. Like, how is she like so much better of a writer than I am? And she's not even graduated high school. So I was like, this is absolutely amazing. And I can't remember if it was Karen's teacher, or just something I found. It was like a Google alert, but I think she had wrote something about innovators mindset. And I was like, this is such a fascinating perspective on school. And it's coming from a student. And so often we are saying like, oh, like we need to listen, to the people we serve. We need to listen to our students. We need to listen to our staff, but then we don't necessarily give them the opportunity to share their voice. And I know that's something that you're really, really passionate about. So I just like, I honestly, like, to say like, why would I take a chance? It was like a no brainer. It was like, wow, this is incredible. And like, I was like, how is she such a good writer? This is incredible. And it wasn't just the writing, it was the perspective. And that's something that Karen and I talked about, is that, like, you do have one perspective, and part of your role is to kind of find out, people have different experiences at school, that maybe what you experience is not what other people experience. And that's, hopefully why I connected you two, is to kind of like, think about the kind of back and forth between each other. So yeah, again, like, I don't think it's something that I ever took a chance on. Karen was an incredible writer, and I'm sure Karen would say the same thing. Her teacher, and is it Sean? Am I messing the name up?
Yeah, Mr. Zebarth, he's the one who tags you on Twitter, and
yeah, and he's so proud of you, and I know that just that, what kudos to him for really encouraging you to put your voice out there, because a lot of times students do incredible stuff that no one ever sees. And so I just kudos to your teacher too. And it's funny that you still call him Mister, even though you're, but a guy, I'm 50 years old. I still call my teachers Mister and Miss and Miss. So that never goes away.
Yeah, I think it's funny that you said it was out of spite. But I agree that a lot of students do work that isn't recognized. So I really appreciate Mr. Zebarth for encouraging us to put ourselves out there. A blog post that I did was just one of the many options. He also said we could do like podcasts or posters or find other ways to put our work online. So I definitely appreciate how he gave us those opportunities and those choices, and how that led us to where we are today here. And again, thank you for introducing me to Jen, because I remember when I showed you the first draft of the first chapter, you kind of ate it up, and I was like, ooh. And then having Jen be there to support me helped me figure out how we need to approach this book in a more effective way.
Yeah, and I know Jennifer. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Jennifer.
No, I was going to say, from my perspective, I was humbled too. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm writing a book with this girl, and she writes better than I do too. So I definitely shared that perspective.
Yeah, and I think that's like, the combination too is, kind of really thinking about, okay, how will educators, receive this? What are some of the perspectives that you bring in to the conversation? Because I think one of the things that is really important about this book is the idea that, hey, we're challenging some of the things that we've had, experiences with school that we even had. Like, I had great teachers, but I'm sure they would have changed a lot of things if they could. And we also didn't want to get into a space where we're like, feel like teachers are being criticized, like they're not doing enough, where they're probably doing so much, but not necessarily having the opportunity to do the things that truly matter because of things that are out of their control. So it's really kind of thinking, what is within your control? What are some of the things that we can think about, and what's some of the perspectives, and how do you leverage this while still honoring teachers that have got into the profession because they want to inspire students like Karen to amplify their voice, just the way you have, Jen, over the years with so many students that I know really look up to you because you encourage them in a way to get their voice out there, and really not think about how they can make an impact on the future only, but how they can make an impact on our current communities and what they can do right now, which is the best way to set people up for success in the future, is to give them the opportunity to lead right now.
Mm-hmm. I love that. That's always been a philosophy that you and I share. I want to come back to a couple of things. I think it's so powerful, Sharon, that Mr. Zebarth gave you. Like, it could have been a podcast, but we all know you don't love this format, right? Like, it's not really you, and writing is more you. So to be able to tap into your strengths, that's kind of one of the many ways that teachers can amplify student voice, for sure. But also the fact that when we think about creating things for just the classroom, right, for teacher consumption, whereas you had the opportunity to create something for the world. And we don't, in today's day and age, and certainly we can all think about a little bit more thoughtfully about how we might be able to do that, right? Because we have opportunities now to share and publish in ways we never have had before. So I think that's really important. And then the other thing that you said, George, that really sort of struck me is you and Katie Novak wrote Innovate Inside the Box. And I think that was really within when I was responding to what Karen's point of view was in a variety of different chapters. I really was thinking about those parameters that public, because I come from a public school system, right, where there are so many things that are imposed upon us for which we have no control. So just thinking about that locus of control and that sphere of influence that we do have and what that might look like in sort of an educational setting is something that I think in my responses anyway, that really drove the way I wrote the idea spotlights for me. Yeah.
Yeah, even just yesterday, and the thing with like I've been writing for a long time, and it's something that I hope that I'm getting better at over time, but it's never been I write specifically to focus on the audience. It's for me to really kind of focus on what's inside my head and how do I get out there and how do I articulate it. Uh, I really think about I've never done a keynote presentation. I have the opportunity to keynote all over the world without writing about what I talk about first, because that's a way for me to wrestle through those ideas, think about perspectives that I might not have. Like what will someone challenge me with, right? And one of the things that I actually did, and this is when we're recording this, no one's even read this yet. It's being released over the next couple of days. I actually write an email every week, and it's called Three Things. I'll just talk about three things, but I just didn't have the energy to write it this week. So I actually pulled up ChatGPT and I kind of said, hey, here are the three things I'm thinking about. I'm going to dictate it to you. I want you to write this in the style of me because you have artifacts in my writing. And full disclosure, I said it right at the beginning. Hey, this is actually basically a collaboration with AI. So the ideas are mine, but a lot of the writing. So I would add and subtract. But then I actually wrote a blog post to follow up, and I said, I struggle with this because I learn deeply, but could a student benefit from this because they don't like writing? And that's, and one of the things I said, and just to kind of give a subject, some of our kids are not bad at science. They're bad at writing about their understanding of science. And so does this open up a pathway for them? And that's always been my focus. I'm trying to understand it from the perspective of a learner to move backwards from a teacher, because I do love writing, but and Karen obviously, is a very talented writer, might not like, doing audio as much. Some students would be the exact opposite. Do we actually figure out, because if you're focusing on writing, if that's what you're teaching, that's the objective, that's a totally different thing. But it's like, hey, I need to understand the student's understanding on this subject area. There's so many different ways you can do this while still, unfortunately, checking the boxes that you have to check to ensure you have a job, right? Like that is the reality of our world too, right? You can't really change the system if you're not in it, because you don't really have access to it. It's really, how do you kind of change it within, where you do something incredible, where more people say like, yeah, actually we got to do more like this stuff, right? So I think that's one of the things that I always trying to focus on is like, hey, what I do right now, this really works for me, but kind of just playing around, this might not be my thing, but I guarantee for some students, this would actually be hugely beneficial.
Absolutely. It's interesting. I mean, it feels like everyone's talking about AI right now. This book is not about educational technology. It really is about a student's perspective and ideas. But we do talk about AI in that we have to acknowledge that AI exists and teach understanding that AI exists. And this is the same conversation we had, 12 years ago. We have to teach knowing that social media exists, right? Like, what does that look like? And I've been talking to lots of kids. I've been substituting in classes, very fun and not fun at the same time. Yeah. But just to sort of stay in the realm, right? And talking to kids about how they're using AI is a fascinating conversation, right? Because you have some extremes. You have kids who are like, oh, I take a picture and I just answer I make it answer the questions for me. That opens up a conversation about, okay, is that helping you or hurting you? And then another student who said, he had ChatGPT up and Gemini up. And I said, what is that? What are you doing? And he was creating an app. He was using AI to create an app for low vision people. And I was like, right?
Right.
This is what we're seeing. And so leveraging it to the best of our ability in our classrooms, or figuring out how to ensure that our students find success while still learning, making sure
Right.
that, that learning is authentic is really important.
Yeah, and that
Um,
you have to that's always been my focus, is really kind of how to play around with this stuff to kind of figure out how does this benefit. Like, I'll be honest with you, this morning I did my workout based on a 7-week-day workout that I created through AI, basically say, here are my goals, here's what I'm trying to do. Can you create a workout plan that fits into this, right? Moving from Canada to the US, taxes,
yeah.
investing is different, and it's pretty confusing, to be honest with you. Canada is way more simplified than it is in the US.
Hmm.
And a lot of people were, trying to explain this to me. And I'm like, I don't understand. So I just said, hey, this is who I am. This is what I do. This is my salary, et cetera. Can you make an investment strategy for this? And basically, it just kind of walked through that. And it was funny because I was working with a group of teachers, and I talked about, if I wanted to make sure that I can have more than my pension, here's the things that I would do. And that group was about half anti-AI and half for it. But the
Mm.
second I brought that up about like their own personal benefit to it, they didn't listen to me for the next 30 minutes. They just popped up their computers and started actually doing their financial planning for the year, right? Which was really fascinating. And the thing for me is, if you see a benefit of it on a personal level, you're more likely to teach it. But if you're just
Yes.
focusing on how do we do this with students, then you're going to have the back, well, why should we, blah, blah, blah. But if you're like, yeah, because then they started seeing, oh, this is not just about cheating on essays. This is actually,
Mhm.
thinking about, way to kind of do different stuff. So, and yeah, and so that to me is really kind of one of the things that I'm focused on, is really how do I learn from it? Yeah.
Absolutely, and I keep thinking, like, again, from, Karen's perspective in the book, like, how might a disengaged student,
Mhm.
when AI exists, what does that look like too, right? Like, really
Right.
having hard conversations about that. I'm not sure, Karen, if you want to speak to, like, AI in university where you are now, at this moment in time. Have there been any sort of, has is there a stance at your school around AI use, or not really? Because it's always interesting to me, sometimes the gaps or the parallels between our, secondary, K-12 to our post-secondary.
Yeah, I think the university wide, it's kind of like, don't plagiarize, because academic dishonesty is a big thing. But it's interesting for me because I study computing and I study humanities. In
Mm.
computing, people are a lot more open to using AI because it makes coding a lot easier. You can design. A lot of our tools that we use for designing and coding, they come up with new AI updates like every single week. So people are using it all the time. And it's something that I think professors have understood, that you can't stop students from using AI, especially because in the industry, in the computing industry, to the tech industry, we're using those tools more often. So they recognize that it's just practical to have students use them in their own way. It's kind of different in humanities, because in humanities, a lot of what you do is you think for yourself and you write for yourself. So I think that in my English classes, there's a little bit more pushback against using it, and you have to, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, because I actually teach a class with UPenn, and it's, teachers talking about universal design for learning. And, over the years it has evolved, like there's a lot of the same objectives and outcomes of the class. But I really encourage them. I said, listen, I want you to actually use AI in this process, but I want you to be transparent when you use it, and to actually, reference it when you're doing this. And so and here are some ways that I've done that. So because instead of pretending it doesn't exist, it's like, hey,
Mhm.
here's for you to leverage it. Just tell me, what is that voice, and where's your voice? And like, I should be able to identify your voice, because I don't want everyone answering a question with the same, voice, or just regurgitating what I'm saying. I want you to actually bring in your own unique perspectives. And, when you teach like a graduate degree course, you have to understand that there are all different levels, or all different positions of people taking that. And I really encourage them and say, listen, your role is to actually take the content and make it applicable to what you do today, or what you want to do in the future. So if I'm getting everyone to say the exact same thing, no matter your role, then it's not really a beneficial class to you. But if I can actually get it to you where you say, hey, this I'm not doing this class plus my job. It's actually, how are you using this class to really bring out the best in your job? That's like, to me, a way easier way to see it, because it's less. I know it's weird. It says it's less time, but it's more purposeful, right? So that's what I really kind of encourage them to leverage the content and the things that we're talking about. But, like, think about how you would use this. And the only thing I say is that if you find it beneficial, you like some of the things that I'm doing in this class, you have to do it as students. You can't just say, well, that was nice, but now I'm going to clamp down on students doing the same thing. I'm trying to get you to experience something different than maybe, what we've experienced, as students in the past in schools.
Yes, and I'm having a similar experience at Lakehead University, where I'm working with pre-service teachers. They're in placement the first time in their lives, and they have, if they're in elementary school, they have, they're prepping for 7 different classes, and they have to send me all their lesson plans. So we really talked about how might you use AI to support you to differentiate instruction, because that's something that they need to do. How might you use it to amplify student voice or give students more choice? They tend to, not all of them, despite my modeling, teach the way they learned, right? How they were taught in school. And so using AI to interrupt that has been really, really positive for me. Let's move on to the next question. And that is, you have spoken all around the world to a variety of different teachers. You've been in millions of schools, maybe not millions, but definitely thousands of schools. And when it comes to things like the chapters, so connections, mistakes, grading, homework, etc., where have you seen in a public school system, preferably, but maybe not, school done right? Like an example of something where you're like, oh, everyone should do some iteration of this, because it is so, so, so good for kids.
Yeah, there's 2 that come to my mind right away, and they're ones that I'm currently, have some connection to. One is Forney ISD in Forney, Texas, public school system. And if you look up you can look it up. It's called the OC.net. And OC stands for Opportunities Central, not Orange County. Karen, I know that, because when I heard the OC, I'm like, are you talking like the TV show? So the OC, but it is a really fascinating space. It's, for lack of a better term, and I cannot. I've been there several times. I could not explain it. I cannot do it justice. You have to go see it. Like, there's nothing they can show you that would actually do it justice. But basically, it's for kind of a simplified explanation. It's a mall, and the mall has different businesses. It has different groups, but it's connected with a high school, and so they actually have different businesses, and people from the community have these businesses, but part of their agreement is that they actually have to employ students as part of that, so they're getting work experience right in there. So you have families coming in there, hanging out. They have like dance classes, they have restaurants, they have all this other stuff, and it's something they do with the community. So it's really a very powerful example of how they're bringing community together. And Justin Terry and his team, he's the superintendent there. When they were kind of building this, they actually, and he'll say this to you if you ever interview him. He has my book right behind him, and I'm very honored that he references me in any way. They actually took a mobile, like a trailer around the community, and they're like, what's in the box? And so they were like, before they started building this, and people are like getting really excited. He's building anticipation. So it's a real source of pride because it's community. And it's kind of an interesting thing. And I hope I'm not being offensive here. It's a mall, and you see 17-year-old kids walking around there all the time, and they are the nicest 17-year-olds I've ever seen walking around a mall, because it's the school. There's a connection, and they have like nursing programs. They have, just different types of things. They actually have a preschool, but the preschool built in there is to really focus on where they want to go, like what they want to create. And so that's something that is really, really powerful. And public school is not a private school. And the whole contention is that, listen, we know we have certain constraints you have to work within, but we can do this. And now, and one of the things that I really appreciate about the team, a lot of places are coming there saying, how do we replicate this? He's like, no. you have to look at what do you need in your community, and what are some elements of this. But you can't just do what we did. And it's not because he doesn't want them to copy them. He's saying it's not going to work if you just try to carbon copy without really bringing in your community in, bringing people together, talking about what is needed, what is necessary. And so that's a really fascinating thing. Comac Schools in Long Island, really amazing team. And I've got to work with them and see some of the work that they're doing. They actually have, they're setting up this year, and they're having schools of. So and again, I'm like a third party on the outside, so they would give you a much better explanation than I would give you about this. So they have, like, for example, schools of business, schools of medicine, whatever. So you still take your regular classes, but you can kind of go into almost a pre-training towards like a college degree or whatever. So you get to kind of experience some of those things. So there's certain classes that everyone takes, but then if you want to go into the School of Business, there are specific classes to that, and they actually act as, credits for. And again, I'm giving this as a third party. They give credit to go into college and stuff like this. And one of the things that I was listening to them speak about it is they were really wanted students to walk out of there kind of having an idea of what they might want to do in the future, or what they for sure they don't want to do, if that makes sense, right? Like if you wouldn't want to go into education, you're 2 years in and go, oh, I hate this, but I put in 2 years, so now what do I do, right? So they're getting that experience, again, public school, and it's just really kind of an interesting way to look at stuff. And the community is very involved in it. They're very excited about this, and one of the things that I appreciate very specifically, they're really focusing on all of their students not only just being financially literate, but financially fluent, and thinking about, basically compounding their money over time, what that looks like, how they can make money work for them. So that is something that, and it's like amazing to see these schools. They're very near and dear to my heart because they're doing just really thinking differently, but also they have budget constraints. They have, standardized testing. They have all this other stuff, but they're still identifying we can really do incredible things, but we just have to think differently about how we approach this. So when you say that, those are two of the schools that come to my mind. But I could do 5 hours on this of like incredible schools I've connected with over the years doing this type of stuff.
I think both of those schools sound really cool, especially when you talk about what they're doing to prepare their students for college and finances. In our book, we have a chapter about teaching students more practical skills in college or practical skills in kind of the high school era. And we acknowledge that, some of that responsibility might fall onto families and what you're doing at home, but it also came from me being a first generation student. And although I taught myself a lot of financial skills, job skills, whatnot by myself, and I did a lot of research, I think I could have benefited still if we had taught that more in school. And I really like when you mentioned that one of the schools, they do their best to prepare students for a career and see what they like or don't like. Because I know some of my friends, they do go through college and then they realize, I hate this, I need to start over. Right. And I'm just like, I wish that we didn't have that pressure on us to decide kind of the rest of our lives at 18, or that's what it feels like. Is that what you commit to in college, is the rest of your life?
Well, and Jennifer, and you tell me if I'm wrong on this. When we went to school, you walked out of high school feeling more confused than anything, right? Like that to me is like you just do a little bit of everything, and then you're supposed to know what you want to do forever. And I joke, but it's true. It took me 6 years to get a 4-year teaching degree because I just went to college because my parents forced me to go, and I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. So, and this is when a semester was $2,000, right? So especially in the US, it is terrifying to think about, like, let our students find themselves in college, because that's a huge amount of money you're paying in to find yourself. Like, go travel for a year. It's way cheaper if you don't know. And so I think that's what they're trying to set them up for. And I think even when with Forney, one of the things I really appreciate, they're not teaching the kids working through those businesses to learn to work for other people. Part of it is that they're learning how to build their own businesses, and college might not be the pathway for them. And there's different opportunities. They actually brought me to speak to their students, and I talked about the connection of the three of, like, how do you leverage AI? How do you actually think about your own digital footprint? And how do you actually think about financial fluency, and connected those three things together. And the students were they just loved it. They thought it was such a unique perspective, because a lot of times someone comes in and says, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. I'm like, no, no, these things can be leveraged in a really powerful way. So how do you actually use these things to create the future I could not create at your same age because of the time frame that we lived in? So I think that's one of the things that, and again, I don't know if that's what you felt, but I was like, I walked out of high school, I'm like, I actually have less idea of what I want to do now
Mm-hmm.
because of this. Whereas I think
Mm-hmm.
they're really trying to help kids figure out. So when they walk out, they have like, yeah, I really like this. And it doesn't mean they can't change, but at least they're kind of like setting them on a path determined by what the students are interested in, what they want to tap into. Because it's not like hey, you're good at this, you're going into this school. The students have the choice of like kind of applying and going through that process.
I love the opportunity, first of all, like opening up to a variety of different opportunities, and that community involvement whenever we can see that. I know I hosted a career human library, and all kinds of different tradespeople came into the school, and that building that community and building those connections for the students. That's not even close to what those two schools are doing. But still, I had so many students come up to me and say, that was amazing, because we never really get to see what's going on outside in our community, and we don't know what we want to do or where we want to go. So I really like that. We borrowed the word hope, the title Hopes for Schools from you. And this is a really great way to kind of bring it in and talk about this. But what are your hopes for school? And I just pulled up the graphic that we used in the introduction.
Say them now that you've already told everybody what they are. Yeah. The first one, and it's actually interesting because we kind of alluded to this earlier. If you notice, I don't actually say the term students is nowhere in there, right? The term learners is in there. And the reason is that anyone that's willing to grow within our community, that was a really important aspect for me. So I didn't want, hey, we want our students to aspire to their dreams, but teachers, too bad. It's over for you. It's really like, if you're willing to grow, there's really great opportunity for you, in the work that we're actually doing. And so the first one I talked about is that people feel welcome in your communities, that they're, welcome in. And it's something I really challenge people with, is that what is the feeling when people walk in to, your school community? I'll go back again to Forney. One of the things, and I understand this, and like, they think differently about this. There's a lot of schools, and I don't want to just say in the US, but, maybe in Canada, I couldn't really talk to this, where it's like you have a door that it's basically a security door, and then you go into like a holding area, and then you go into another security door, and the reason is for safety, but it feels very unsafe. Like, it's like, why do I have to go through all this stuff, right? Like, and whereas they have like a kind of, so I live close to Disney World, and they have like these things you just walk through, and you just walk through, and it like can do whatever. Like, it's a little bit less daunting than an airport. And so people will just come in there all the time, and they have like security and stuff like that, but it's just a different space. And then you're seeing student work all over the place. You're not seeing the like, here are the principles from the 1900s, right? It's like, here, we're really elevating the students that are in the building right now. They've created the artwork. They're creating this, so they see themselves on the walls. That to me is kind of a really important environment. I know I joked about your music, but like the music coming into this podcast is like a good vibe. And it's like that too. So like, I always think about, when I'm doing, for example, professional learning sessions, am I playing slow jazz to, make people fall asleep, or am I playing something that gets them excited about being there? The next one I talk about is this idea of focusing on the strengths and passions of each learner. That kind of goes back to the COMAC idea. They're not saying like, hey, you suck at this, so you need to more work in this. They're like, hey, what are you really interested in? What lights you up in the morning? And when I talk about that, a lot of people kind of like, well, what about their weaknesses? The thing is that if you actually have confidence in the work that you're doing and you feel valued, you're more likely to work on your weaknesses. But if you're just hearing constantly what you're not good at, then you kind of lower that as well. And then the last one, learners feel their contributions are necessary to the success of the class and the school as a whole. Going back to those two schools that I mentioned, they're seeing themselves up there. They're doing so much. The conversation I had with the students on that one day with Forney ISD. Then I did a follow-up with community members, and not only community members that their kids go to the school, but the business community and people that, because they hugely benefit from a really passionate and intelligent community. So they know that this is like, hey, this is going to help us all through this process. So they don't just like, hey, here's what we're doing. They actually say, hey, where do you see us going? What would most benefit you? How do you bring it? And so when their plans and they build the OC and they have, Comac does the schools of, people in the community see their fingerprints all over the place, which makes them want it to be more successful, right? Like if I had no say, I don't really care if you succeed or fail. But if it's like you have my input and I see like, hey, I actually added that, I want this, and now I become an advocate. So that to me is something. It's interesting because I think it's something, I don't know, I don't want to say we lost, but we haven't emphasized. Whereas when I grew up, and I mentioned this right at the beginning, I was very proud to grow up in Humboldt, Saskatchewan, because, my family was very close with the school. We used to like cater, lunches and stuff like that. And I know it's a very different time. If I got in trouble in school, I was terrified to go home because I knew if I was going to phone call. And it's like, now it's like the opposite. Like it's like people are scared to call home because they don't know what the parents are going to do. I was like, grew up in a different time, right? I was going to get it in two places. That was kind of the thing. And so they're really emphasizing the importance of community adding to this space, and it's actually elevating the community, because the community's got to like keep up with stuff. You got to keep up with trends. And they're like, we want our kids to be successful. And what we used to do, there's some elements of that are still really, really important, but there's also some things that we have to evolve and adjust to. And that's where they see themselves working together. So they're all learning, but they're all contributing. So those are kind of my hopes in a nutshell, just highlighting those two schools I mentioned earlier.
That's awesome. And so much of what you've written here, feeling valued, feeling like you have contributions, they really do permeate the entire book, I think. So we really appreciate that you shared that stance. It's funny when you said about like all three of us are first generation Canadian or American. So
Yep.
I think Karen and I could very much see that same or feel that same sense of, you'd be in trouble. Parents, of who are immigrants seem to have very similar.
School should always be central to community. I do not care the generation. I
Agreed.
think that to me is like, that was like, I grew up in that, and it was a very important part of, it wasn't just a important part of our house. It was an important part of our town. It was an important part of where we grew up. And, it was people, teachers were rock stars when you walked out, because, they just did so much for the community, and we just appreciate it. And that's why I stayed connected with them. And they still, what I love about it, so many of the teachers that I used to have, they message me congratulating me on stuff to this day, which is amazing, right? So
Love that.
yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, as we wrap up, two questions. What are you currently reading, and what are you currently watching?
Well, I'm watching sports because it's playoffs in basketball and hockey. So I really, I don't have any time for anything other than that. So I'm a big Orlando Magic fan ever since I moved here. Our dog is named after one of the players, Jalen Suggs. Our dog is named Suggs. But we're like big Magic fans here. They lost on the first round, but I like to watch and see that. It's, it's kind of like interesting, the drama. This is actually a book. It's funny because I brought up some of my highlights from it, and it's totally going to be aligned with your book and what's coming out. It's called Superagency: What Could Possibly Go Right with Our AI Future. And the quote that resonated with me that I highlighted is, you'll never get the future you want by simply by prohibiting the future you don't want, which I feel is happening, is like, hey, don't do this, don't do this. I'm like, but they're still going to walk out, and then they're going to be exposed to this stuff. It's actually, how do we help students see the potential benefits of this? I know that's something that both of you are very excited about. So that's one of the books that I'm reading right now. And I'm trying to figure this out. It's kind of interesting because there's like two types of books I'm reading right now about like AI and the future of education and the future of learning, and stoicism, like anything that has to do with and my focus right now is actually, how do we connect the two? Because like if something has been brilliant for all of eternity, it probably is still going to be brilliant right now. So it's not like, oh, now we're way smarter than the ancient philosophers. It's like, hey, the ancient philosophers probably knew something, how to deal with change, how to like, leverage learning, things like that. How do we take those ideas and actually help them use those things to guide us into the future?
That's awesome. So I'll grab both of that book from you and the one about stoicism even as well, for our show notes when I figure out how to create show notes, but that's on my list. I just want to thank you, both Karen and I want to thank you so much, George, for taking the time. We know how busy you are. So to spend, a few minutes with us chatting about our upcoming book, and the fact that you've published it, we really appreciate all the work that you and Paige and Sal and Lindsay have put into the book, because we're really excited. The feedback has been really positive. We know that it's a perspective that isn't really out there. So thank you.
I just want to say thanks to both of you too, because I know it's like a terrifying thing to like put your thoughts out into the world, but that is like Impress. The whole premise behind the company was to do things differently, and not just about how we work with our authors, but the ideas that we're putting out there. And again, we're always saying the importance of student voice, but then we're not seeing anything from students. So I hope people that are listening to this, that are this is we want to hear from students. So here's a great opportunity of like someone who went through the experience, a teacher kind of working back and forth with them, and what can you benefit from. And I think the thing that was really important for me, I don't think, no offense to either of you, because this is something I believe about myself, I don't think you're going to give like, if you do these things, everything will be fixed. The hope is like, hey, here are things that matter to me. How do you apply them in your own context? How do you make them your own? Because so often we're looking for the answer from someone else, but it's actually in our own communities. It's, within, and it's really kind of bring that out. So I think that's what both of you are inspiring in your work, which is why we're really excited to have this published and sent out to the world.
Thank you. That's amazing. And to those of you watching or those of you listening, thank you for taking the time. We'll see you next time.
There you go.